think that in the past few weeks, maybe months, you've all been targeted by these videos, the reading journal setup. How many of them have you seen? So many that you've ended up thinking, oh, you know what, I want to create my own reading journal. But then you stopped yourself and you said, you know what, I don't even know where to start from. Well, if this is your problem, then this is the perfect video for you.
Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, and if you're new, welcome, I'm Stefania.
If you want to know more about how to create a reading journal, you're a beginner, or maybe you've already given it a try in the past but then failed at it, then I would suggest you to keep on watching this video, because I'm gonna give you several tips about things that I've learned throughout the years. I've been using a reading journal for years and years and years, and I've been creating it from zero with my own hands. I think that the very first reading journal that was actually really only a reading journal, well, that was back in 2022 when I've created one and I was so proud. And since that year, I've learned so much, and so I thought, why not putting out all the things that I've learned in a video so that other people that want to join the reading journal community can actually learn something without living it on their own skin. Let's say it in this way. The first thing that you have to do when you think that you want to have a reading journal and to give it a try is ask yourself a question. And that question is, what type of reading journal is the perfect one for you? Yes, I said type because we can call them all reading journal, but they can be extremely different one from another. You can have a digital reading journal, and if you don't know how to create your own, well, you can find them online. There are a lot of people that actually sell them, some others that give them for free. You can find it everywhere, and we're talking about a digital reading journal, so it's there, it's ready for you to use. All you're gonna need is basically a tablet, because maybe you could also use it just with your phone, but I don't think it's the best thing ever. It can be a little bit tricky to use something like a digital planner just with your phone, because the screen isn't that big. Or maybe you don't really want a full reading journal. All you want is just somewhere to keep track of the books that you own, that you've read, or if you've enjoyed them or not. And so maybe in that case, you could be more interested in something like a Google Sheet file or an Excel one, where you can just keep track of all of these things. So you don't need to actually do so much around them, because maybe you don't want to actually write any type of reviews. All you want to do is just have a page where you're gonna write all the books that you've read, when you started or finished them. Let's say something easy to keep track of the books that you read, nothing fancy. Or then maybe you want actually a physical reading journal, but you don't want to put all the work behind it. In that case, the other option, it's a pre-made one. I think that nowadays you can find them everywhere. You can find them on Amazon, you can find them on Etsy, you can find them on local stores. They are everywhere. We're talking about some reading journals that are perfectly ready to be used. Then there's the last one, which is, let's say, handmade by you, if we want to call it in this way, where you create your own reading journal. Now, maybe it's easy to say, okay, I'm for digital, that's my choice. And it's easier to be like, I'll go with the first option because I actually want to also write some reviews, I like that idea. And then in that case, this video, it's no longer made for you. If instead you realize that maybe you just want to give it a try with a digital file just to keep track of all the books, same thing. Instead, if you want to pick up the last one, then this video is just perfect for you. I'm gonna tell you why I've decided, for example, to create a reading journal from zero and not use a pre-made one. I'm gonna tell you, there are some pre-made reading journals which are amazing, outstanding. They are so gorgeous and I would really love to use them. But then I was like, would I actually use them? And the answer was no. The reason why I don't go with pre-made reading journal is because I like to create something that actually works for me. And pre-made doesn't always work for everybody. For example, one thing that I am not really in love with pre-made reading journal is that a lot of time they have book reviews all together at the end, and I actually like to have them divided by the months in which I read the books, if it makes sense in the way that I'm saying it. But that's one of the several reasons that made me go with let's create my reading journal from zero. If you've decided to go with the handmade reading journal, then stick around and watch the rest of the video for several tips. Once you've decided that you want to create your own reading journal, then it's important to understand what you're gonna need. So let's talk a little bit about the supplies, because I think that this can be a topic that can create a little bit of anxiety sometimes. There are only two things that are a must for a reading journal, and we're talking about a notebook and a pen. That's all you're gonna need to actually create your reading journal, okay? You might also want to use some glue sometimes, yes, but when you see this wonderful reading journal, you might think that that's too much for you. Well, you can also go and create a very minimal one, and you don't need so many fancy stuff to do it. You're just gonna need a pen and your notebook, and that's it. But maybe you're not made for minimal. You're like, minimal, it's not my thing. It makes me feel like it's a little bit sad. I want something more. I want more colors. I want it to be a little bit more elaborated, let's say. Then in that case, keeping in mind that you could use different pens, so with different colors, you also might want to start using washi tapes and stickers. Washi tapes and stickers, you can find them everywhere. You can buy them online, you can buy them in local store, you can support people on Etsy, you can buy them literally everywhere, and this depends on you. You might also want to use also stamps. I am not an expert on that because I do own some of them, yes. Do I really use them? No. So this is an example of something that I've gave it a try in the past but then ended up giving up. So this is the main things you're gonna need, and I will not spend too much time talking about stickers, washi tapes and pens, because you can buy the ones that work for you, that you love, or you maybe already own them, even better. You don't need to go crazy or to spend so much money on that. So don't go crazy over these supplies. But maybe we should really talk a little bit more about notebooks. The first thing that you have to consider about a notebook is the size. Do you want an A5, an A4, an A6, a B5? These are all different sizes. How can you pick the right one? This depends on you. I'll make an example. An A4 for me, it's completely out, like it's too big for me. A B5 could work for something like my yearly pages, but it wouldn't work well for my monthly setup. So I've decided not to use it because it would have been too big. Also for book reviews, I usually give a page or two to the books that I've read. So if I read that book, I'm gonna give it a page or two to actually write my thoughts. And here's the thing, A5 is the perfect size for it. B5 for me, it's too big. You could also, however, be a person that's like, you know what, I'm fine with using a B5 because I can put more books in a page. This is something that you have to choose on your own. For me, at the same time, an A6, which let's say usually it's the travel journal, something like that, it's too small. There's not enough space for book reviews, so I've ended up going for an A5, which is the perfect size for me. Even if I have to say that for years I've been wanting to use a squared notebook, but they're not available in my country and the shipping is too expensive, so that's not an option for me. So when you decide to choose something, also keep in mind this. Look if you can find that something where you are, because elsewhere it could be a problem. Another important thing is the type of notebook. I always use a dotted one, but you could also use a lined one or a grid one or one with blank paper. That's up to you. But keep in mind that probably the best too is the option with or grid or the dotted paper, because they are easier to use. If you have a lined one, creating something could be a little bit in the middle, same for the blank one. So I always think that if you want to start a reading journal, these two are the best option. But if you don't want to buy purposely a notebook because you don't have it in the house and you want to give it a try with, a lined one, that's perfectly fine. You can still work with that. I just think that the other two help you a little bit more when it's time to actually set up things. The last thing you have to keep in mind is the paper itself. I always go with notebooks that are 160, 180. And that is because I use pens and colors that can't be used on normal paper. If it's gonna be a normal one, then once I'm gonna turn the page, I'm gonna see everything on the other side, and I absolutely hate this. So also the type of paper can be important. If you're gonna still create a very basic reading journal in which you're not gonna use colors, you're gonna use just a single pen, and you know that that pen will not be see you through the next page, then you can perfectly use a notebook that's 120, for example. This, it's up to you. I personally always go with 160 and 180, and there are a lot of brands that actually sell this type of notebook, but keep in mind they aren't so cheap, okay? They are expensive, because if you think that you're gonna be able to buy a notebook like that with €5 or $5, you're so wrong. But keep in mind that, for example, to give it a try, you could also start creating a reading journal with two notebooks that you can buy, for example, over at Tiger. They are always usually under €10, at least where I am. So that could be the perfect one to give it a try, but the paper isn't that thick. So be careful. When it's time to use it for the first time, go at the end of the notebook, take a page and do a pen test, because that could really be important for you to do, to understand which supplies you could use or not in your notebook. Now you have everything in your hands to start your own reading journal. And this is where you stop yourself again, and you don't know where to start from. You're like, okay, but what should I create? What should I put into it? Here's the thing. The type of spreads that you're gonna create, it's all up to you. Create something that works for you. If you decide to give it a try, for example, to a page for a challenge, and then you notice that that page is something you're never gonna use and you end up forgetting about it, then leave that page behind. Don't go crazy over it. Don't try to do something that's not working for you. Just don't do it. If it's not working, it's not working, okay? So if the idea behind the spread can work, then maybe you have to change the layout. But if also the idea doesn't work, just drop it. It's perfectly fine. You're creating something that has to work for you. So if it doesn't work, don't put into it. Now you're gonna be like, I don't know what kind of spreads should I create. And here is where social media can be your biggest friend. Just look up where you want on Instagram, on TikTok, on YouTube, on Pinterest, and search for reading journal ideas. You're gonna find so many. For example, in my yearly pages, I like to put yearly stats. I like to put a place where I put all the covers of all the books that I've read throughout the year. I like to create a bookshelf where I'm just gonna color the books according to the rating. In another one, I keep track of how many books I want to read that year, so my yearly challenge. I keep track of other challenges that I've decided to join. This depends on you. For example, if you don't make a challenge even for how many books you're gonna read in 2025, probably you don't need a page to keep track of that, you know? Maybe you can just put that info in another spread without creating a page just for that. You might, for example, instead want to create a tracker in which you keep track of all of your series. Perfect. Or maybe you're a person that reads only specific authors and you want to create a tracker to keep track of the books that they've written and the ones that you've actually read. You can do that. This depends on you. You'll have to give it a try, think with your head, and just think, could this work for me? Yes or no? It's perfectly fine to look at other people reading journal just to learn something from them, okay? To take inspiration from them. It's perfectly fine. And once you start doing this, you're gonna realize that your mind might go completely crazy. So what I suggest you to do, especially if it's your first time ever, is to take a paper and write down everything that's coming in your mind. Start by writing down the spreads that you would love to create, not even how you would love to set them up. Just start with what you would want to put into your reading journal, and then you can also think about how you would put that actually black and white. So do you want to create just a list? Do you want to actually print book covers? Just write everything on paper, because elsewhere then you're gonna be confused. You're gonna have so much in your mind and you will not be able to start. When it's actually time to start working on your reading journal, the question that I get asked the most, okay, not the one, there are several, this is one of them, is about the space. How much space do I need for this spread? What about that one? What about this? How do you know it? Okay, slow down. it's fine to be in this place with your mind, to think, okay, I want to create the yearly pages and I want to create a spread in which I'm gonna print all the covers of the book. How many pages should I leave? Here is what I can tell you. I learned from personal experience that you have to leave more space than what you actually need. Because 1 year my goal was 30 books, I've read more than 70 books and I had no space for them. So I had to go throughout all the yearly spreads and try to make it fix by adding paper with washi tape and hoping to create some not real Dutch door but like fake Dutch doors to make everything fit into it. It was a completely mess. Like at the end it's not that bad to look at it, but it's not the best idea ever. So what I tell you is, if you have a goal for that year to read this amount of books, leave space for more books. Because it's better to have more space that's going to end up being empty at the end of the year, rather than finding yourself not even halfway through the year and be like, okay, I don't have any more space. Where do I put these books? So this is something you should keep in mind. When it comes to other spreads, such as like, for example, you want to print the covers of all the books you've read, in that case, how can you understand how much space you're going to need? Well, in that case, first you have to understand the size in which you're going to print the covers. Because once you know that, you can count how many covers you're going to put into each single page, and then you're going to be able to actually count how many pages you might actually need. Now, when it comes to space, there are some friends that can help. The first one is, or better, are Dutch doors. They are perfect to create a spread on several pages without having to rewrite the title every single time. Now, I like in that case to put the titles on the side of the pages, so on the first page and on the last one on the side, because I really hate to cut the notebook this close to the spine. I've learned it's not the best for me, and so this is why I like to do. But elsewhere, you could also create in the other way. But Dutch door really allows you to create a spread on different pages without having to rewrite the title multiple times. So this is definitely a good help. Another thing that can be your best friend, pockets. I've created them last year, yes. I've created them again this year in my yearly spreads, yes. Especially for challenges. And this is why, when I started to set up my reading journal, I was like, maybe I want to join that challenge and that one. And there are some challenges that I've created purposely on pages, like for example, the alphabet one, I've decided to give a page to it without any problem. But then I was like, what if throughout the year, especially the beginning of the year, I decide to join several challenges? Where do I put them? And so I created with some paper a pocket, and inside that pocket I can put several challenges without freaking out of how much space I might need for that. You can also keep in mind that all the space that you're gonna leave empty might be empty. For example, you could still be like, you know what, I'm gonna still leave 5 pages empty for challenges, but then what if you don't join any more challenges? You're gonna have these 5 pages there empty, and that could be a problem for you to look at them. This depends on how you are. For me, it would be a problem. So I decided that pockets could be a good solution just as much. Well, we're not even probably halfway throughout this video, and I've already mentioned so many times the covers of the books. I was like, you can print them here and there, and so before I go on with other tips, I just wanted to let you know that if you want to print your own book covers all in the same size, I have actually 2 tutorials that are gonna be really useful for you if you've never done this before. In this tutorial, I teach you how to do that with 3 different options. One is with Canva and it's completely free. One is with Google Docs and it's completely free. The other one is with Photoshop. In this case, Photoshop isn't free. I go through the step-by-step on how to create them. So the sites where I usually take the photos from, the process that I go through, and some tips about printing them. Now, this is probably one of the most lovely things to see. This and the bookshelf spread are almost in every single reading journal you've probably seen so far, but it's not a must. If you don't have a printer, or you don't want to waste money on paper and ink, and so you're like, I don't want to print the covers, that's perfectly fine, okay? You don't have to do that. It's perfectly fine. Actually, this is something I would have loved to do, but I'm not that good at drawing. If you're amazing at drawing, you could also draw all the covers by hand. So this is another option you can keep in mind. But if you want to go with the, you know what, I want to actually print all the covers in the same size and attach them in my reading journal, then before you go crazy, I don't know how to start, I don't know how to do it, I have 2 tutorials online for that. I think the easiest one is probably to do it with Canva. Keep in mind that the Canva one, I've done it using the free version, not the pro one, so everybody can do it, it's completely free. After everything, you've managed to create your yearly pages, and maybe that's more than enough for you, okay? There's not a rule that says that you have to have yearly pages and monthly pages. No, you can create whatever you want to. But let's talk a little bit about monthly pages, just in case you want to create them. What I have, for example, in my monthly pages, I have a spread, a layout in which I keep track of the books that I read in each single day. It's really easy. I have a calendar on top, and underneath I write the name of the books I read throughout the month, and each book get a color. And then if in these 5 days I read that book, I'm gonna create a line with that color. So it's really easy. Now, you can decide to do that, or you could create a spread in which you actually keep track only of the days in which you finished the book. This is up to you. There are so many things you can create. I, for example, also have a monthly reading tracker, which honestly, I could also understand it by looking at my yearly pages, because I have a yearly reading tracker, but I also want to have one in my monthly pages. I repeat, you could choose not to create anything in monthly pages. You could just create all your reading journal around yearly pages, and that's perfectly fine, okay? You're not forced to even create reviews for your book. This is the best thing about creating your own reading journal. You decide what to put into it and what not to put there. Monthly pages can change from so many things, and you can find a lot of ideas again on social media. I only use a monthly view in which I keep track of the books that I read and in which days, and a reading tracker. Then I just have my pages in which I write the books reviews, let's say it in this way. Sometimes it's not even a real serious review. It's just all the thoughts are coming in my brain about that book, just put them together, and sometimes they're not even the best to read, honestly, but that's fine. But elsewhere, you could, for example, create a page for monthly stats, which actually I have as well, or what you've read in that month. So you could decide to print the covers of the book, or just doodle some books and on them write the title of the books that you read. You could also create a tracker to keep track of the pages that you've read, or the amount of time that you spend reading, because I don't know that, but I know that there are some people that actually track how much time they spend with books. So for example, if that day they're gonna read for 30 minutes, they're gonna count the 30 minutes and not the pages. Some counted both of the things. That's completely up to you. Another spread that you could create, for example, is a monthly spread for the quotes of the books that you've loved this month. I don't do that because I just don't use it. I've tried in the past, but it's not made for me, so I've ended up not using. You could create also just a single spread for your favorite book of the month. This is up to you. You can find so many ideas on social media. Again, take a piece of paper or a post-it or whatsoever and just write down everything. And once you've written down everything, go through the list and be like, do I really want this? Yes, no? If it's no, just take it away from the list. If it's yes, start thinking on how you could set up the page. I'm talking about the layout, so I don't know, maybe for the favorite book you could actually create a spread in which you put the cover of the book in a big version with some quotes around it, or with some infos. This is all up to you. You can choose it. And my tips for this situation, just like for the yearly pages, is to write down everything, because maybe when you see it done by somebody you think, oh, I want to do it too, it looks amazingly, but then once you think about it a little bit more, you're like, but do I actually need it? Like, for example, I might see lovely trackers for audiobooks, okay? I might see people keeping track of their audiobooks, how many they listen to, or where they listen it from. They might be lovely pages, but it would be stupid for me to create one because I just don't listen to them. I would love, I could be able to, they're just not my thing. Maybe 2025 I will give it a try again, I don't know. But the point is, it would be stupid for me to create a page because it wouldn't be a page I would end up using. I could probably decide to use it in another version, so maybe with ebooks, yes, but this is something that comes to you. And as I've just said, this is another example, another little tip. Just because you see a spread, it doesn't mean you can't use it in the same way, but to keep track of something else. For example, the bookshelf one. Everybody creates them. Everybody has them. But for example, you see people that color the books according to the rating, or they're according to the months in which they've read them, or they're according to the genre. It can be for so many things. I actually have a video in which I tell you 10 different ways in which you can actually use this tracker, and you understand that the tracker is the same one, but what you're gonna use it for, it's a completely different thing. The last thing that I want to talk a little bit is about the books reviews. And this is important because you might put them in your reading journal just like you might decide not to do it. Let's try to go through them. There are some people that don't put any type of reviews in the reading journal, and that's perfectly fine. This is an option. But if instead you want to actually put the reviews inside your reading journal, then you can choose to create a spread with a review on each single page. So this page is for this book. You can just write your review without adding anything. You don't have to add stickers or washi tapes. It's not a must. You can decide to do it, but it's not a must, okay? You can just write a few words and that's perfectly fine. Another option is actually writing short reviews. And so in this case, maybe on a page you're gonna have 2, 3, maybe even 4 reviews, and that's perfectly fine. You could also choose to actually put just the book with the title, the name of the author, when you've started and finished it, and your rating, and I don't know, maybe a favorite quote from it, and write nothing more. This is up to you. So also in this case, the amount of space depends on what you want to do. Then there is another option. You could also just do reviews for books that you actually really loved. I've seen a lot of people being like, to that book I gave it 2 stars, so I'm not gonna spend my time on writing a review for it. And that could work. I honestly have always so much more to say about books that for me were a big no, rather than books that were 4 or 5 stars. It's crazy, I know. So I always create reviews for all the books. I just don't do it for non-fiction if they are like self-help books. But this is something you could choose. You could actually choose to write only reviews for the books that you loved, or reviews for only the books that you didn't like. Because maybe you're like, you know what, I just want to write a review so that I'm gonna go back to it and be like, why I thought that the book wasn't worth my time, and then you can go and read it again. So this depends on you. When it comes to reviews, especially if you're a fantasy reader, you might consider series review. I usually do for each single book a review, but you could also choose, for example, if you read a whole series, you could choose to create a review for the whole series. That's up to you. So these are different ideas that you could take inspiration from, but again, you don't have to. If you don't want to do this, if you don't want to put book reviews, that's perfectly fine, it's up to you. You can create amazing spreads and drawing things, or adding stickers and washi tapes, or you could just write almost nothing. It's perfectly fine. Remember, the reading journal that you've created has to work for you and not for other people. So if it's something that's gonna be like, you know what, I love this, but I hate doing it, like I end up finding myself being like, do I really have to write the review? I don't want to do it. And it starts to be like a problem, like a weight. This is when you are understanding if something isn't working for you in your reading journal. Your reading journal is something that you should create because you love it, you have a passion for that, you want to do it, and it shouldn't be something that you're creating to stress you out, okay? We already live in a world full of stress. We don't even need to stress ourselves out even more than what we already are. So keep in mind this. If it works, keep on doing it. If it doesn't, just leave it behind. And when it comes to book reviews, maybe you don't know it at all, then you can try all of them until you don't find the one that works for you. Nobody's telling you to not do it. So just take your time to think about the different ideas you could have for the reviews, if you want to put them or not, and then give them a try if you can choose one. Or maybe you could actually do all of them. Like maybe you could create a well-made book review for the books that you loved, while for the one that you have like let's say, you didn't really love them much, you could create a single page in which you put them all with just a sentence or two about them, be really short about them, let's say it in this way. So these are just a few things that I thought were really important to say in a video for people that are, let's say, beginner when it comes to reading journal, for people that would love to start doing it but don't know where to start from. So I thought that this could be really helpful. Of course, maybe this video was like nothing at all for you if you had been using a reading journal for years and years, and the things that I said were probably pointless for you because you already know them. But it's perfectly fine, because this video was actually born for these people that start, because this was an idea that had been on my mind for a little bit of time, but especially when I started doing my setup, then when I posted the video, so many people in the comments were like, oh, I'm starting my reading journal, oh, this was a nice idea, this and this, and I was like, do you know what, it's so hard to find probably a beginner thing for people that want to start a reading journal, because everybody's like, oh, it's so easy, you just take a notebook and you do it, and then when it's time to actually do it, maybe it's not that easy. So I really hope that this video really helped somebody out there. If it has, I'm so happy and glad to hear that. As always, thank you so much for your support. If you've enjoyed this video, remember to give it a thumb up and let me know with a comment if you have a reading journal or not. Thank you so much for your support. See you next time. Bye!